All right, Julia, welcome back to the podcast.
Hi, thank you.
It was the end of May that we talked about the Ministering in the Age of Trauma conference,
Good. Mhm.
and I'm curious about how that went. But this episode, we have you back, and it's going to be fun to learn a little bit more about your background and also your own private practice as a counselor, and then also a couple workshops that you have coming up.
Yes, absolutely.
Great. Yeah. So maybe, yeah, let's start with the conference, like
Mm.
how that went.
It was amazing. I still have people coming up to me and telling me how much they learned from that and how it like blew their mind. And we had 5 speakers. Um, it was like a high for me. I think behind the scenes being the coordinator and it being all in mental health geekdom world. But the topic specifically was so important. And so those who attended, I really think they got something that was very practical for the here and now. And yeah, it was a really good experience. I kind of want to make it an annual thing, but
Oh, uh-huh. Yeah.
yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. Um, I know there's probably a lot from each of the speakers, but is there any are there like one or two things that kind of stood out that you took away from the conference?
A lot of the well, a lot of what the participants took away is they talked a lot about how they didn't know before how much someone's past and their story informs the lens in which they view experience something now. So we talked a lot about how, even just some of the mandates and things coming through, how people interpret some of those things based on their past and their story. And so that was a big eye-opener thing. What it really think I
Mm.
helped, what I think it really helped was help folks not judge other friends and family members who may be responding differently in this climate.
Oh,
So
okay.
that was pretty cool. Personally, as a professional, I learned a ton about coordinating a speaking engagement, everything from tech and timing. I think I had 2 pages of notes of things I would just behind the scenes things that nobody else saw. But that's the kind of stuff I get a high off of that I really like doing. And so it only made me stronger. I know that's a song, but that's
Yeah.
uniquely me, what I took away from that.
Nice. So,
Mhm.
like those notes, you're like, I'm ready to do the next one,
Yeah,
or
already learned so
it's gonna
many.
be great. Yeah, nice, nice. So, for listeners that may have missed your previous episode, I'll put the link to that show or that episode in the show notes. But could you share a little bit about your background?
Yeah, absolutely. So I always say 6, but I think that was like 3 years ago. So I think I've been here for 8.5, 9 years in the Pacific Northwest. Came here for grad school. So I graduated from Western Seminary in Portland from their counseling program. That's where I first met you. You were in my case conference. And I live in Vancouver now. But in between there, I worked 4 years at a university in a group practice. And so I really learned a ton about oh man, I learned a ton, right? The group practice kind of model, and then also the working at a university or higher education setting at their counseling program.
Mhm.
And what was really beneficial for my career and just professional development and identity was that the university allowed me to build curriculum for courses as well as teach. So I taught like 400 level classes and 100 level classes in the psychology and counseling. And
Mm.
that was a huge deal for me, as well as they called me the outreach coordinator. And so I did a ton of workshops as well around everything from values to boundaries to self-care. Just literally someone would come up with an idea and kind of call me and I'd create curriculum for it like a couple of weeks
Wow.
later and just do these activities. So that was, I mean, I just have so many files of curriculum that's just already built. And what's really cool is now I can build off of that now in my private practice.
Nice. Which part of that do you like most? Like the research and developing the curriculum, or like the delivery and the speaking, public speaking or teaching,
That's that's a good question. I don't think I've ever been asked that before. Oh, that it's such a package.
or all of it?
Yeah, I think there's more anxiety with the delivery, right? But it's like the good kind of anxiety where you're just like, it's just a ball of emotions, but it's again that kind of like game time mode. But also the engagement. I love the classroom dynamic more than like the speaker and a silent audience kind of thing. So I really like engagement, like the classroom hands raising and like I call it popcorn question or game show question. So I really like people to ask questions and engage with me.
Yes.
Um, but the research part is also fun because it's like my if you've ever taken the strengths finder, my top strength is connectedness. And so when I'm researching, it's just like there's like a ribbon to everything I've ever learned before. And it's just like you kind of get into like this good kind of zone or flow, I guess, right?
Yes. Yeah. Connectedness is one of my top five. And
Really?
and for me, besides how in terms of like interpersonally, like is just compassion for how we're all connected. But for me, that it plays out in what I read. I or not memorize. I remember and integrate it pretty quickly because I find its connection to the other stuff that I've learned and try to like kind of put it in those file cabinets in my brain.
Yeah, that's a good point. It is a good way of like that recall process and like, oh, this is like this and this is like that.
Yeah. So and that's fun for me because to kind of like organize like new information. Where does it kind of fit with everything else? But like there's so much to learn.
Oh my gosh.
And
Yeah.
it makes it fun. So you worked with university age students
Mhm.
for several years. Were there some specialties or like presenting uh, complaints or disorders that you specialize in, worked with?
At the counseling center, we really like to say and explain the college setting really is just a micro version of what you see, nationally, right? So maybe I personally didn't see a client that had certain diagnoses, but within the center, I heard it all. I
Mm,
mean, the full, there's, you hear everything and I know my director, the supervisor, he was over all of us. And I know he got a snapshot of a lot of different things going on. Specifically, I I would say a lot more. This is not like a counseling term, but I hardly use counseling terms. Is a lot of memories coming on board for the first time. So students who they were experiencing anxiety or I can't sleep or
oh,
um, we all know the red flags were starting to come, the alarm systems were starting to happen, and too many times people focus on the alarm system as thinking it's the cause, right? But then you start opening up the story and talking things through and you realize, oh no, this started 10 years ago, 5 years ago. And so what was really powerful is these students being able to connect stories and meaning and understanding of how unprocessed or unaddressed pains and stressors and abuses in the past are affecting them now.
right.
Uh, I'd say that was a larger theme.
Hmm.
Um, and then specifically, I finished last year. So last school year was my last year at the university. And so I was just at that end of when 2020 was not really at the end, but they had gone through some of the peak changes. And so isolation, anxiety, issues with screens, all these kind of things, adjusting to being home all the time and a screen in front of them and the issues with, do I have to show my face in class? I can hear you, all that kind of stuff was high.
Yeah.
High.
My wife teaches at the high school level. It's interesting. It's still an issue at the college level, turning your computer on, your screen on. Yeah.
How many times I get an email from teachers, how do I get these students to participate? It's like, yeah, it's a challenge.
Yeah. Yeah. So while I have you, is there anything that you'd recommend for a college student, or even a high school student right now, dealing with anxiety, uh, or depression, struggling emotionally?
If I was talking to a young adult or a traditional age college student, it would really be speaking and educating around that anxiety is not the cause, it is the symptom, and that this is not a life sentence. Like, I have anxiety or I am an anxious person should not be like written in stone above or like a label across your forehead. And so my biggest thing would be, hey, this is a problem, but you're not the problem. I would really do a lot of like separating the problem from who they are. And really, I guess a message in that would be, like, don't let this become an identity.
Oh man. Yeah.
Like, that would be, I know that's a lot of work and processing, and you can't just put a USB drive in someone and say, be different. But if I could say one like message,
Thank you.
followed by a lot of relational support, it would be that.
Yeah. I love that statement. Don't let it become an identity, because you kind of just succinctly described what I see a lot of students struggling with, or even adults, um, that have depression or anxiety. It's they've either had it so long, or it's brought them so low, and they've struggled with it so much that it really does feel like an identity, and or they just feel trapped in it. And so, yeah, that's such a hopeful thing to separate those things. Yeah. Yeah. The so to shift gears a little bit, now that you're not there on the campus of the university, you've got your own private practice. And so tell me a little bit about that.
It's been exciting. To be honest, I don't know if I would have taken the move if 2020 didn't happen and I didn't have two colleagues that were on the other side in their own private practice who were kind of saying, come over, the water's warm. So I was really thankful for a couple colleagues, and actually peers from Western Seminary, who really kind of helped me take that jump. And it has been one of the best decisions I've made. I love it. I see clients 2 days a week. And then, 3, 4, the other days are all kind of flex days around creating workshop, networking, just reading, a lot of different things like that. So, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now. I do telehealth and in person.
Nice. So you've kind of created like a balance, or in your week, that it's not just all meeting with clients. You're developing workshops, and yeah, nice. So it was kind of a leap of faith. What were some of the things that you had to overcome? Like, how did you make that leap?
Taxes and accounting. For me, that was
it was intimidating. All that stuff. Yeah.
And I don't know what you want to call me at heart, a frugalist. I don't want to pay other people to do things that if I knew how to do, I would, right? If I don't need a certain kind of software, but it's more like, but let's just say I'm
do it
getting
out on paper.
I'm getting to the point where I think I need to pay somebody, but that I think was the biggest, one of the biggest like pushbacks. And then I thought the getting licensed with the state and getting the business and the trademark and all those things, I thought that was going to be more complicated and expensive, and it was pretty doable. I literally on January 11th, I got approved. I think it took me a month to do all the paperwork just to get the business stuff, but I was going hard. I mean, I was like spending hours
You were focused.
Yeah, I was focused, and on top of it, the moment emails would come in, I'd get them right back out.
Okay.
So January 11th, I got all the paper from the state, and then by February 11th, I was seeing clients.
Yeah.
So.
I don't remember how long it took me, but I'm sure I dragged it out 3 or 6 months.
Is that your process?
Yes. To avoid the process is my process. Yeah. Yeah. So those, that was some kind of my hesitancy to do private practice for sure. And but so it sounds like just diving in and doing it and just tackling one email at a time or one step at a time.
Yep. And having support, having people I could text, and a couple people who have already had their private practice going, who I could be like, hey, do I need to pay for this? Or like, do I need both of those forms? Or so there's a couple times where not a couple times, several times where that kind of support was helpful. So
yeah. And was that like folks in like your supervision group or just fellow
friends
alumni
friends from when I graduated that we've kept in touch. And
yeah. So if anyone's listening and they're thinking about making the leap into private practice, make sure you find some people who have are a little further down the road and pick their brain and try to get their support and their help. It's we need social workers and counselors and therapists. It's such a huge need, and so there's in the next 5-10 years, hopefully there's going to be a lot of people being trained, learning, and hopefully us as older therapists will be ready to give some advice and help you avoid any mistakes that we've made along the way.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Before we talk about your workshops, I'm curious, who do you feel like you do your best work with in counseling? Like who are your ideal clients or the people that just click with you?
I had a colleague ask me that like a month ago, and it really stumped me. Like I had to literally like stare at the carpet for a while, because I was like, what does that look like? Even though I know that's like the thing to ask when you're trying to figure out your specialty and like how to market yourself and stuff. But I'd say ages 18 through 25, around there. And that's even hard to say though, because that's hard. This is a hard question for me. I'd say for someone who, they're wanting to understand, there's a hunger. There's almost like this like hunger or fed upness of like, something's got to give. Like I've tried all these other things. Like, what is it? Like this person that just kind of comes in and is just like, seriously, I'm distressed. I'm all over the place. Like this is my last ditch effort kind of shot before, I don't know what, I moved to Timbuktu or something.
They're motivated.
Yes. Yeah.
Like
motivated.
They're like ready to do the work.
Yep.
Okay.
Now on the flip side, what is really just a beautiful experience is when there's a client who you can tell you're one of the first people that's ever like held space for their big emotions, or really tried to see them or remember things about their story, or just really validate and see and acknowledge and uplift them. And that like light that kind of comes on, of like, oh my gosh, like this is what it feels like. And then that, over time, that kind of like confidence, that there's some good memes out there about this, but that kind of come back in. I think I'm talking a little bit more about what I love about therapy.
Oh, no, oh, that's good. Yes.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so around that age group, anyone who's really struggling, I love working with the emotion of anger. I don't know why. Shame and an anger, those two are like I go after, helping people to find words for and articulate and be able to express. So if there's some suppressed anger and things like that, I do a lot of, I really like working with clients who have emotionally immature parents in their background. That's a big one. And then as well as anyone who's have codependency behaviors, or in Christian cultures, we call it people pleasing. I think that's actually a more broad term, but in Christian culture, it's more around the word servant. You hear that a lot more. These kind of things.
Yeah.
So work-life balance is
folks who struggle with boundaries with ministry or burnout,
yes.
overcommit.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Leaders who are struggling with burnout and work-life balance. I love these kind of categories. Yeah.
Nice. The anger. If someone is like struggling with anger, and maybe they're but they're afraid of how destructive it is, what does that look like to go to a counselor and like work on your anger problem?
Yeah, that's, multi-layered, as you know, because what are they coming in with, right? Where are they at in the process? What blocking belief is there?
Yeah. Or here, I'll instead of like someone who's like struggling with rage and out of control, I'll how about someone who like is not in touch with their anger, or doesn't have permission, like a Christian person who is like, it's not okay to be angry, but I am pretty miserable because I do know I am angry. Or I may not look like it on the outside, but if you knew what I was thinking, you'd know I'm angry.
I don't think people are as good at hiding it as they've convinced themselves.
Oh.
So I try not to, what I call like, expose people too quickly. The first couple weeks of like, I'm going to let you have that expression and I'm not going to let you know that I just saw that expression. Right. But as time goes, there's going to be a lot more reflection. Right. Like, I kind of saw your lip go up there, or I saw your jaw tighten, or I saw, these kind of things. Before we get there, I might express some appropriate anger to a story or to a situation, right? Not something that's too big or scary. I got to read the room with the client, but for them to feel that it's a space that, that was a lot, like letting affect come out.
Yes.
And then getting to, once we can kind of tolerate a little bit more of how many times I have clients when I say, that's infuriating, or I just mesh that word. Frustrating, infuriating. Is that a word?
Infuriating.
Infuriating. There it is. Like, that sounds weird.
Yes.
Rage. And they'd be like, well, I was kind of annoyed. They like take it down several layers, right?
Yes.
So a lot of identifying of words, how many different angry words there are, right? And just putting different levels on them. I use Likert scales, but I do a lot of body work. Where do you feel that? Have you felt that before? These kind of things. That's all tolerating emotion, but then getting to, what you said, these blocking beliefs, like, I'm not allowed. Like, if I get angry, then XYZ, or good girls don't get angry, or whatever the narrative is, right? I get playful with challenging. Why is anger the one that we don't get to feel? Why specifically that, because I take emotions as data. All my clients know emotions are data. They're not good. They're not bad. And so these kind of things, I think again, just creating a space where you have permission to bring this kind of stuff in. And then
Mhm.
once the underlying beliefs get on board, then it's a lot of stories, it's a lot of challenging, it's a lot of rewriting.
Nice. Yeah. As you describe that, I think um, some folks they will admit or be aware of like muscle tension or like disruption of their like appetite or their stomachs or headaches um, before they can like name or identify that emotion, the anger. So that's neat
Yeah.
to kind of explore that where that is, where they're feeling that in their body. And yeah, the I like making it safe for them. And yeah, because if you do it too early, then it's like, shame, like you caught me.
Yep.
Like I thought I was like really trying to hide it, and like I was vulnerable, and then
Mhm.
you like pointed it out, and I don't like that. It's uncomfortable.
That
um
trust isn't there yet. They don't know what I'm thinking yet. They don't know
mm,
who I am in the
mm,
room with them yet.
yeah, yeah. The that the data, emotions as data. um uh that's it's so helpful to understand what your body's trying to tell you, what your heart, what your emotions are trying to tell you. um and for so many people that that suppress their emotions, and they haven't had permission to express them. And um and after a while, it's don't even have language
Yep.
to communicate or process or understand their emotions.
Mhm.
And I I tell folks that emotions are data. They're a signal that your heart, your spirit is trying to get your attention
Yep.
for unmet needs, and they get louder and louder um, and messier the more you ignore them or repress them. Um, so yeah, I like that. Like you don't hide them as well as you might think. The people around you can kind of read you better sometimes than you can read yourself. So yeah, that's neat. Is there anything else that you want to share with listeners about like the type of work you do with clients?
I think the kind of leading or main area is what I call identity and spiritual formation.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So my clients, I work with, you know, any background that you bring in, right? That you feel like you're that you want to meet with me and I'm the right fit for you and these things. But um, there's something powerful about the integration of these two areas. It's the reason why I chose the school I went to, is because where I stood, I couldn't see mental health and emotional health separate from spiritual health and well-being. I
Mm.
think they're very much connected. And so these are areas too where I try to create a space where folks can talk about things without the pastor that was, there growing up, or the parent that had a certain way of thinking or doing, and kind of having a space where they can challenge and
Mm.
explore and grieve, and um, really articulate just everything in that sphere. So, I mean, there's no such thing as getting bored in this field.
Oh,
That's
right.
for sure.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's such a like a meaningful process that we go through as we like develop and grow into adulthood. And I'm guessing like working on a campus, so many students uh wrestling with their identity and their faith, um
mhm.
getting away from home and being exposed to new ideas and
Yeah.
different worldviews, different cultures, different beliefs. It can definitely shake things up uh, pretty significantly for for people. Um, yeah, the um, when clients come to you, do do you have that like on your intake form? Like, do you want to talk about that, or is that something that just kind of comes out as you're working with them?
It's mentioned in my informed consent. I mentioned my worldview, my Christian worldview,
Mhm.
but that's not like an agenda that I have, or I think everybody from Western probably has the same informed consent. But I tease because I know a lot of me and my peers like shared the same language.
Mhm.
Um, and then later in the intake, it says, is there anything you want me to know about your culture, your nationality, your religion? I have kind of a thing about that. Anything you want me to know, and then they have a choice of putting anything they want their me to know in there, and then is spirituality something that you want to incorporate into therapy? And if they say yes, then I just check in with them. But I typically, my method behind the scenes is
Mhm.
I wait to let them lead with anything with that, right?
Yes.
Because I want to make sure first that if it's going to be incorporated, I need to assess if it's helpful. I need to
Mm.
assess if their faith community, if is something that's adding to their life. And I know that's a complex thing. Even just taking one of those is a very complex thing. But in general, I need to first
Yes.
kind of understand and get a background on how they view it, how is it adding or taking away from their mental and emotional well-being. So I don't dive into that usually until a little bit more down the road when there's more trust built and I can kind of get a better picture.
Yeah. I I I tend to do it that way as well. Um, but I want to dig a little bit more into what you just said. Um, what do you how do you think um, uh, a person's faith, specifically a Christian faith or upbringing, can negatively impact a person's mental health? But then in in, um, in what ways does integration or identity and spiritual formation help someone with their emotional struggles and their
Mm,
mental health?
that's a good question. Um, how it could negatively, especially on areas around behavior. This is what it means to be a good Christian child. This is what it means to be a good Christian parent. And so
Mm,
there's these like notches of behavior, ways of acting that if we really look at it, it's more socially and culturally influenced, right? As a Christian in the Bible, we're using words more like law or religion, right?
mm,
And so these kind of areas are more what I would say negative or not helpful. Um,
mm.
uh, what would be helpful? This is so interesting. It just keeps kind of popping into my head. I listen for the tone of voice when they talk about Jesus.
Mm,
There is something in the tone of voice, not only in, I believe in listening prayer and that the Holy Spirit is present, but and some people may or may not, but what I'm listening for is I know that Jesus's tone of voice is tender.
mm.
That's something that I know that I know. And so when I'm thinking or bringing that in, even when there's correction, there's a loving tone to it, right?
Mm.
And so these are things I'm kind of just as an individual and what I'm bringing to the table, things that I'm assessing. And so I can kind of ask, like where, where did you first learn that phrase, or where do you remember learning this from, right? And it's interesting how much it's come from humans, right? It's
Yes.
reminding them of a human, of a harsh, critical um, human. So sorry, I kind of went on a side
Oh no, it's
rail
good.
there, but that's something I do assess and kind of listen for in my spirit. And how it's been helpful. Oh my goodness, good faith community is so good.
Mm,
It That's one of my biggest heart cries, is if there was more good fellowship and faith community, um, I'd be able to work myself out of a job much quicker.
mm.
There's something so powerful about that support, and good support. So Yeah, I think those are ways that it comes through positively. Yeah.
Yeah. The uh, uh two things that I'm studying right now, learning about. I'm listening to Dane Ortland's Gentle and Lowly book about Jesus. Um, and so I love how you said that you listen for how their tone of voice. Um, and then I'm doing an EFT training on attachment, and it's talking about safe haven.
Ooh.
Um, and is their church, is their quiet times, their scripture reading, is it a safe haven for them, or is it like when they describe, like when I ask them about their faith, clients about their faith, um are they saying, like, is it just associated with guilt and disappointment and failure, or
Mhm.
is like quiet time and prayer, is it like a safe haven, like is it a place that they experience comfort and peace and look forward to, or is it just pressure and disappointment and um
That's
yeah,
really beautifully worded. Yep.
you
Yes.
know yeah, yeah. So uh yeah, there I I like talking with folks about how do we uh honor people's faith, listen for where they're at in their growth, their spiritual growth and faith development. And I also like talking with pastors and church leaders about how to support their people with
Mhm.
their emotional health and mental health. And sometimes it's it's hard to do that in uh in their sermon series, or how they do their preaching, or even their like Sunday school or small groups. So that's why it's neat when uh counselors in the community provide workshops and trainings for mental health topics. So would love to kind of hear about what you've got coming up next month.
Yeah. Yeah, gearing up. So I didn't mention this before, but right now I'm actually in an 8-week book club process group. I haven't come up with which name I like better, but it's on the book Abba's Child by Brennan Manning. And so
Mm,
I'm taking 8 other women through this book, and so I'm halfway through that. And so I think I'm going to keep doing that. I think that might be a quarterly or maybe just twice a year um, book, and that's all about identity formation and spiritual formation, that kind of category or area.
mhm,
Um, and then what's coming up in November. So the first thing is what I'm calling the Unoffendable workshop, and what that really got birthed out of was, oh my gosh, I'm exhausted about having an opinion and being frustrated and
mm,
just constantly in this place of what I call lovelessness or cold-heartedness. That's not me. I'm not a cold-hearted person.
mm,
I was not who I knew I am to be, and so I really believe the Lord kind of helped me diagnose the issue. And I think it was offense,
mm,
which leads to unforgiveness and a bunch of different things. And so, what that's really kind of stirred into is I invited 2 other folks to be talking at this Unoffendable workshop, Shauna Danberg and we call him Dr. Dab, but Dr. Brian Davenport. And they're going to be really talking to this area of offense. So I'm going to be what I call defining the problem. So I created like an assessment of how you know you're offended, and I
mm.
created like a 2-page thing of how to stay offended. So it's kind of the flip, like keep doing this if you want to stay offended.
Miserable,
Yes,
offended. Yeah.
exactly.
Okay.
Oppressed and heavy and not in a good place. Um,
Mm,
so, and then Dr. Dab will be talking to, he's just a Bible geek. He's like, got 2 doctorates and like he's just a Bible guy. So he's going to really be talking about what can we learn from Jesus? Like how did he address offense? Because it sure was alive and present when he was walking the earth. And then Shauna Danberg, or Pastor Danberg, she'll be talking to the call to action. So one part of my style, I guess, if you want to call it, I don't know if it's because I grew up with older siblings who we watched movies all the time, and then I worked at a movie shop. I don't know why, but I speak in movies,
Oh, okay.
especially older movies a lot. I think, and I feel like I get a lot of like impressions in movies. The movie 300. So when you think of this small, very dedicated group of people, that's kind of my hope behind Unoffendable, that there would be, who attends this workshop, they're coming in saying, hey, I'm hungry for change. Like, I already kind of know I'm in this category, or I'm not here to share it to other people and go tell other people about it. Like, I want a change in my life, and I want to leave here. I want to leave this workshop saying, I'm going to stay unoffended, right? I'm going to become unoffendable. That's really kind of my heart behind it, is let's get serious about this, especially brothers and sisters in Christ. We got to act different with one another. I don't care what umbrella denomination or whatever is going on. I really think it's affecting our mental health. It's affecting our families. It's affecting our communities. And I think we're called to higher way of being. So that's kind of my call to action.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like, yeah, yeah, you named a few things, families. It's affecting churches too, like disunity in churches. Uh, two of the most important helpful books that I read during the start of the pandemic in the last year were Unoffendable and Getting Your Life Back by John Eldredge, Unoffendable by Brent Hansen. And
Yes.
the whole idea, like, uh, um, I'm gonna be careful. I don't want to be too self-deprecating, but I will phrase it this way. Like, I try to play like the peacemaker and moderate on the internet and social media, but definitely uh, have strong opinions and can be cynical and critical. And like you said, like it can change you. You know, you can tap into it and get drawn in and sucked in. And for me, just like pride and arrogance and self-righteousness and all that stuff.
I'm with you.
And so it's like, I think you said, like, I'm tired. Like, it's exhausting. And that that book, like, was very, very challenging. Um but super, super helpful.
Oh,
It's just letting go of that, and actually not trying to justify anger, not trying to spiritualize holding on to resentments, and actually loving neighbors, our enemies. That's so when I'm at my best, I'm like really committed to, yes, loving my enemies, loving the unlovable, not um and really seeking to extend God's grace and mercy to um n- not just like, oh, like missionaries, like having this missionary thing, like I'm gonna go to some other country and um uh like be a humanitarian or like share the gospel, but the hard work of like actually being charitable and kind to someone who disagrees with me about like virus stuff and political things and all that. And
exactly.
and like if uh I've had so many conversations, not just as a counselor about mental health stuff, but just talking with folks in my day job about their physical health. And so many times, like, being offended, getting sucked into the news, getting sucked into social media, like it comes up when I'm talking to people about exercise and weight loss,
Mhm.
um, because and stress management,
Yeah.
because have so many conversations about mind body connection. And this topic, this issue, um, is eating away at our emotional, spiritual health, and physical health.
Yeah,
Like
it
we're
really,
losing sleep over the news. Um,
it's like a leech.
yeah, yeah. And so that's really cool.
Mm.
And so folks will be able to sign up, get more information, and register for
Yep,
that
that's
on your
on
website.
my yep, that's on my website. It's all under events at the last little tab there. And this is what there's no suggested cost. We're just saying, suggested donation of
Oh,
any amount.
so folks can
So
make a donation, and
yeah.
oh, that's really neat. So you kind of opened it up so for folks to not let the cost be a deterrent to
Exactly.
attending. Okay.
And we
Yeah.
will be providing childcare for ages 10 and under as well.
Wow. Okay.
So I'm trying to remove all the barriers. just get in here and get real.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So,
Great.
and that's on November 7th. It's in Vancouver.
Hmm. Okay. So you've got the Undefendable workshop, and it sounds like it potentially could it not necessarily sit around the table. This could be like a big event for.
Yeah, I hope I don't know as what it's on a Sunday night, right? I don't know if people are already kind of gearing up for the next day or things like that. So yeah, as far as numbers, I don't know. We'll see what it turns into. But I think big in terms of like I think people are going to walk away changed by the commitments that they've made.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. The I I will. I want to hammer this a little bit more.
Yeah.
This principle or like teaching um was so helpful to me. It gave me a lot of peace. Like
Mm.
I'm just thinking of like the time I wasted uh watching riots on Twitter. Um like there was like I like the first one or two times I watched, like it was probably that was plenty, maybe even more the second time. I really didn't need to do that to myself.
Yeah.
And it
Part of this.
it just fed negativity and like unhealthy piece of myself.
Mm.
So definitely encourage, if you are struggling with just your mindset and your attitude towards other people, lovelessness, I like that word. If you're struggling with lovelessness towards your neighbor, towards others, yeah, definitely encourage you to attend that workshop and learn more about this. So thank you, Julie. That's exciting. You guys are doing that. Yeah. Um, yeah. So the other workshop you've got is on creative journaling.
Yeah, total different tone, isn't it? It's like, oh, serious. And then it's like, oh, light colors and scribbles on paper. Journaling, if you would have told me 20 years ago that what I was doing would turn into a workshop, I would have just been like, you're wild. Why would you ever think that? This is a very big part of me as a person, is journaling. My small groups know me as the journaling person. In church, I think people know me as the journaler. Like, I've had teachers walk by and grab my homework and show other people. Like when I look back on my story, words on paper is not like a English major type of word on paper, but like creative lettering, typography,
Oh.
colors, highlights, diagrams, images, sketches. This kind of like brain dump onto a paper is very much a part of my story. And what I started to realize as I started to go through my graduate program and get all these alphabet soup letters behind my name is, oh my gosh, this is helpful for a reason. And what I've been doing for so many years fits into these models, and these are the therapeutic terms for them. And this is why it helps the brain. And this is what tactile, like, all this different stuff. And so what I've done is I've really meshed those two worlds. So much of my experience with this is why it works and why it's helpful. And so I have 7 P's that I go through, everything from play to process, to plan, to ponder, to pray. There's a couple other, I can't remember off the top of my head. And I bring the participants, it's a 4-hour workshop, and I bring them through this process, and I give them actual time in the workshop to get a taste of each one. I still have people coming up to me and they'll show me their journals and be like, look what I did, that kind of stuff. And people are having breakthroughs. And because what I've noticed is there's a huge blockage with the word diary or what it means to journal. So a lot of folks when they think of journal, they think of putting a date up at the top and putting what you had for dinner and what you did that day.
I've tried so many times.
Yeah.
I'm a wannabe journaler.
You're a wannabe? Maybe maybe I can turn the page for you. Mm-hmm. So I really address it in a whole new way, because what I've noticed is a lot of times it has to do, it's connected with perfectionism, beliefs around, well, I spell things wrong. Oh my gosh. If you look at my journal, I sometimes spell my own name wrong because I'm trying to focus in on the font. You know what I mean? Maybe not that extreme. Maybe I'm being a little too far with that. But I mean, I definitely spell things wrong. There's no rules. There's just right with a W, right? And so I really I give them an experience of what it means to accept their own limitations. Like I kind of turn it into this like pseudo therapy when they don't even know, right? Of like tolerating these big emotions of like, hey, what do you do when you're feeling anxious? Okay, here's a feelings wheel. Let's start identifying emotions on a page, And so the logistics around that is, again, this is something I try to have quarterly. And so this one's on November 13th. It's a 4-hour workshop on a Saturday in Vancouver as well.
Mm-hmm. So a few of those words, plan, ponder, play, like, it just gets my brain going. There's folks that like show you your journals like their journals afterward. Is there like a specific type of person who like would benefit from this, or is that even the way to frame that?
Man, I've had those who are like, I'm creative, I'm an artist, that's me, right?
Yes.
There's some who are like, ooh, I love self-care, I love geeking out on self-help books and self-improvement books. Okay, that's me.
Yes.
Then I have some who literally say to me, I'll join your workshop if you never call on me or make me speak, and I can sit in the corner.
Okay.
You can come and I will not even look you in the eye if you don't want me to. Right? Like, because some people just don't want to be seen.
They're not going to have to share
exactly
what they do.
And I'm big on, I don't want people to expose themselves if they don't feel up for it. So I kind of give like a few breaks, and then the extroverts are the ones who really feel a profound change will speak up, and then we move on. It's not a process, a group process experience. I actually kind of try to cut that off because I want people to be in their own zone. And I ask people not to look at each other's. I don't say don't look at each other's, but do not comment a value statement on your partner's or your person next to you's journal, right? Oh, that's so good. You're such a good artist. None of that. We're not putting value statements out there. We're really kind of keeping our zone to our own kind of category. So yeah, I really try to make it accessible. If I hear more males interested, I would do it in a heartbeat. But maybe I need to kind of change a few features and make it even more, I don't know. I'll get there someday.
Oh, okay. Low male turnout.
Yeah. If I, and co-ed, I'm up anything co-ed. It's just more women respond to my, my smaller group events,
Okay.
understandably, but I'm all for, yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
I I'm gonna think about that.
mhm.
It's unfortunately I uh do counseling on the weekends.
Oh, really?
that
Oh, you're
that's
a
that's
weekend warrior.
that's why I missed your conference. I really wanted to go to the ministry conference. Um, but yeah, the recently had a fun experience of doing a painting uh thing at our art church. Uh,
Yeah.
my friends Benjamin and Heidi, they host a house church, and so we had this fun thing where it was kind of a shared experience where uh, we had canvases and we rotated. We would do one color
I want to do that
and
someday.
like listen to half a song or a song, and then rotate and then just kind of build. And so by the time it came around, like what you started with is not what we ended up with. And so it was a lot
That's
of fun.
awesome. I hope they keep doing more of those. Yeah, I think the artists are on the rise. I think the creative and see, I think we're all creative, right? Like it's not like it, I think we all have a creativeness to us. And I
Mm,
think and engaging that side of the brain, engaging that part of our soul is like it is essential, I think, to humanity. So that's
okay.
we judge our artwork too much, and
That
that's what gets us in trouble.
that's a good word, because that is still a message that I'm trying to overcome in my life, is that I'm not creative. Um, and the because when you just started describing your journaling, my first thought is like, oh, my daughters would love that
Uh,
because they love the font and the typography stuff and the calligraphy and like the pretty stuff. Um, so I'm like, oh, that sounds pretty. They would love that. But when you talked about pondering and planning and process and things like that, it's like, ooh, yes,
that's
that's not just a gal thing. Yes.
no, no. See, and that maybe I shouldn't have led with the letters because that's what I do personally, but I'm not like teaching or requiring that, right? It's a lot of collaging, tearing magazines out and putting two images on there and moving on, like
Mm,
um it's it's inviting people to their journal in a new way.
mm, yeah. And like collage, I started watching Val Kilmer's documentary,
Mm.
and he was doing it, and it was kind of wild, and I was like, wow, that's pretty intense. Um, and like just the imagery. So, yes, I gotta free up my inner artist. I'm still in process.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Yeah, yeah. Um, boy, uh, it's super fun to talk to you again, Julia. You got a lot of stuff going on, and uh, the last year and a half has been a big change for you.
Yeah.
So that's exciting. Um, so listeners will be able to click on your website from the show notes. Any last things that you'd like to say to share?
I wanted to get one book out there. I kind of mentioned it to you before, but my little pitch, I've been reading Becoming How or Learn How to Be a Church That Responds Well to Abuse. And they go through everything from mandated reporting to knowing like your state processes around DHS. Why am I having a brain fart? Um,
DHS, Child Protective Services, and
thank you.
yeah, yeah.
You.
Mhm.
It's not like they're training you to be a therapist. They're helping churches, and they have a whole online program. This guy, Brad Hambrick, it's all free. So churches literally, you could just get the handbook, turn the TV on, and they step you through. And it's 2019. It's published in 2019, so it's updated.
Hmm.
But this is one of, I think, of many books that if you start hunting, if you're a ministry leader or in a church, that I think this would be a really powerful process because I think our churches, we have got, as the church, we have got to respond to the pain that we're seeing in a new way. We got to take a new way to do this. And I think there are churches and there are ministry leaders who are doing it well that we can learn from. And I think there needs to be order and structure and discipline and boundaries in the process. It can't be feeling one way, feeling another way. We're going to do one thing this week. Because I think we need to be places, whether it's a home or a relationship or a building, where there's trust and safety, a safe haven, like you said. So that would be my pitch.
Yeah, nice. It's Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and so I remember going through seminary before I became a counselor. I went through seminary for 5 years, and I didn't get training on those issues, and so and that's how people get hurt more when we're inadequately trained as church leaders. So thank you for sharing that resource.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Julia, take care.
Thank you so much for having me.
I hope you have a lot of fun and that the events go well next month.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.